Have you ever wondered why saving money feels like trying to hold water in your bare hands? You know, you should be putting money aside. You've read all the advice about emergency funds and retirement planning, but somehow your bank account balance keeps hovering around the same disappointing number month after month. Well, here's something that might shock you. The reason you can't save money isn't because you lack willpower or because you're financially irresponsible. The real culprit is something far more fundamental and completely outside your control. Your brain is literally wired to work against your savings goals. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about why smart people make terrible financial decisions. If you've ever felt like you're fighting an uphill battle when it comes to building wealth, this video is going to change everything you thought you knew about money and psychology. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to share with you goes against everything traditional financial advice tells you about saving. Now, before we dive into the fascinating science behind why your brain sabotages your savings, let me ask you something. When you think about people who are great at saving money, what comes to mind? Maybe you picture someone with incredible self-discipline, someone who never buys coffee or treats themselves to anything fun. Perhaps you imagine they have some special gene that makes them naturally good with money. The truth is far more interesting than that. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why some people seem to save effortlessly while others struggle despite their best intentions. Here's what's really happening inside your head when you try to save money. Your brain is essentially a survival machine that evolved over millions of years to keep you alive in dangerous environments. Back when our ancestors were dodging saber-toothed tigers and competing for limited resources, the ability to delay gratification wasn't exactly a survival skill. If you found food, you ate it immediately because there was no guarantee you'd find more tomorrow. If you had the chance to acquire something valuable, you grabbed it right away because waiting might mean losing that opportunity forever. Fast forward to today, and we're still carrying around those same ancient brains, but now we're trying to use them to navigate a world of credit cards, investment accounts, and 30-year retirement plans. It's like trying to run modern software on a computer from the Stone Age. The system just isn't designed for what we're asking it to do. This brings us to the first psychological force working against your savings goals, and it's called present bias. Present bias is your brain's tendency to heavily favor immediate rewards over future ones, even when the future reward is significantly larger. Think about it this way. If I offered you $20 right now or $25 in 2 weeks, which would you choose? Most people instinctively want the $20 today, even though waiting would net them an extra $5. That's present bias in action, and it's absolutely devastating to your ability to build wealth. Here's where it gets really interesting. Neuroscientists have actually studied what happens in your brain when you're faced with immediate versus delayed rewards. When you see something you want right now, like the reward centers in your brain light up like a Christmas tree. There's activity in the ventral striatum, the area responsible for processing immediate pleasure and satisfaction. But when you think about saving that same money for a future goal, a completely different part of your brain gets involved. The prefrontal cortex, which handles planning and self-control, has to work overtime to override those immediate impulses. The problem is that the emotional immediate reward system is much more powerful than the logical planning system. It's like having a sports car engine attached to bicycle brakes. The part of your brain that wants instant gratification is revving at full throttle, while the part trying to make rational long-term decisions is barely able to keep up. This explains why putting $500 into your retirement account feels like a loss, while spending that same $500 on a new gadget feels like pure joy. The retirement contribution is abstract, distant, and uncertain. You won't see any benefit for decades, and there's no guarantee it will even work out. But the gadget gives you instant ownership, immediate happiness, and a 100% certain payoff right now. Your brain literally processes these two scenarios as completely different experiences, even though they involve the exact same amount of money. The future reward exists only as an abstract concept in your mind, while the present reward is vivid, real, and emotionally compelling. Time becomes warped relative to the potential reward, making it incredibly difficult to choose delayed gratification over immediate satisfaction. But present bias is just the beginning. There's another psychological phenomenon that makes saving even more challenging, and it's called loss aversion. This is where things get really twisted. Loss aversion means that the pain you feel from losing money is roughly twice as strong as the pleasure you get from gaining the same amount. So when you think about putting money into savings, your brain doesn't process it as building wealth for the future. Instead, it processes it as losing money that you could be spending right now. This creates a fascinating psychological trap. Every dollar you save feels like a loss, while every dollar you spend feels like you're avoiding that loss. Your brain is essentially tricking you into believing that spending money is the financially responsible choice because it helps you avoid the pain of loss. It's completely backwards from a logical standpoint, but it makes perfect sense from an emotional one. The research on this is pretty mind-blowing. Studies show that people will go to extraordinary lengths to avoid losses, even when avoiding those losses means missing out on much larger gains. This is why someone might refuse to invest in the stock market because they're afraid of losing money, even though not investing virtually guarantees they'll lose purchasing power to inflation over time. Loss aversion also explains why people hold on to losing investments for too long. They can't bear the psychological pain of admitting they made a mistake and locking in that loss, so they hold on to bad investments, hoping they'll recover. Meanwhile, they're quick to sell winning investments to capture those gains, which is exactly the opposite of what successful investors do. Now, here's where things get even more complicated. Your brain doesn't just treat all money the same way. Instead, it creates what psychologists call mental accounts, where different sources of money get categorized and treated completely differently. This concept, developed by behavioral economist Richard Thaler, explains why people make seemingly irrational financial decisions that would never make sense if they treated all money as equal. Think about how you'd handle finding a $100 bill on the street versus earning an extra $100 at work. Even though it's the exact same amount of money, most people would be much more likely to spend the found money on something frivolous. Like, that's mental accounting at work. The found money gets categorized as fun money or free money, while the earned money gets treated more seriously. This same principle applies to tax refunds, bonuses, gifts, and any other money that feels different from your regular income. Your brain creates separate mental buckets for different types of money, and each bucket comes with its own spending rules. The money in your windfall bucket might be fair game for impulse purchases, while the money in your rent bucket is strictly off limits. Mental accounting can completely derail your savings efforts because it creates artificial distinctions that don't actually exist. Money is money, regardless of how you acquired it, but your brain doesn't see it that way. This is why someone might blow through a $1,000 tax refund on vacation while simultaneously worrying about how they'll afford their monthly expenses. The really insidious part about mental accounting is that it often happens unconsciously. You don't deliberately decide to treat different money differently. Your brain just automatically sorts incoming money into various mental categories, and each category triggers different spending behaviors. Understanding this can help explain why your savings goals keep getting derailed by money that feels extra or free. These psychological forces work together to create a perfect storm against your savings efforts. Present bias makes immediate spending feel more rewarding than future security. Loss aversion makes saving feel like losing money rather than building wealth. Mental accounting creates arbitrary rules about which money can be saved and which money should be spent. But wait, there's more. As if your brain wasn't already doing enough to sabotage your financial future, it also has this delightful tendency to make you care way too much about what other people think. Enter social comparison theory, which basically explains why your neighbor's new car makes you feel like your perfectly functional vehicle is suddenly a piece of junk. Here's how this works. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment, comparing your situation to everyone around you. This made perfect sense when we lived in small tribes where social status determined access to resources and mates. If everyone else in your group had better tools or more food, it was a genuine threat to your survival. So your brain developed this hyperactive comparison system to keep you competitive. Fast forward to the modern world, and this same system is now triggered by Instagram posts, Facebook updates, and that coworker who just bought a house they can't afford. Your brain sees these signals and immediately starts screaming that you're falling behind, that you need to spend money to keep up, that saving is less important than maintaining your social position. Social media has turned this psychological quirk into a financial weapon of mass destruction. Every day, you're bombarded with carefully curated glimpses into other people's lives. You see their vacation photos, their new purchases, their restaurant meals, their designer clothes. Your brain doesn't understand that these are highlight reels, not reality. It processes these images as evidence that everyone else is living better than you are, which triggers an almost irresistible urge to spend money to close that perceived gap. This is why financial experts talk about keeping up with the Joneses, but they don't usually explain that it's not really about materialism or vanity. It's about a deeply embedded survival mechanism that your brain uses to assess social threats. When you see someone with something you don't have, your ancient brain interprets that as a potential danger to your social standing, which historically meant danger to your actual survival. The bandwagon effect makes this even worse. This is your brain's tendency to adopt behaviors simply because other people are doing them. If your social circle is buying expensive coffee, taking lavish vacations, or upgrading their phones every year, your brain starts to see these behaviors as normal and necessary. It's not that you consciously decide to copy them. Your brain just automatically adjusts your spending baseline to match what it perceives as the group norm. This creates a vicious cycle where everyone in a social group is trying to keep up with spending patterns that nobody can actually afford. Each person sees everyone else spending money and assumes they must be doing fine financially, so they increase their own spending to match. Meanwhile, everyone in the group is actually struggling with the same financial pressures, but nobody talks about it because admitting financial difficulty feels like admitting social failure. The psychological impact of this is brutal. Like, every time you choose to save money instead of spending it on something visible, your brain interprets that as a potential loss of social status. Driving an older car, living in a smaller apartment, or wearing clothes from last season all become sources of anxiety because your brain is constantly worried about how these choices affect your social position. Here's where it gets really twisted. Your brain actually makes you feel guilty for saving money because saving often means saying no to social activities that cost money. When your friends want to go out for expensive dinners and you suggest staying in, your brain starts sending you warning signals that you're damaging your relationships. When everyone else is buying new clothes and you're wearing what you already own, your brain makes you feel like you're falling behind socially. This guilt around saving is one of the most underestimated obstacles to building wealth. People talk about budgeting and discipline, but they don't address the fact that your brain is actively punishing you for making financially responsible choices. Every time you save money instead of spending it on something socially visible, you have to fight against psychological signals that tell you you're making a mistake. Now, let's talk about what might be the most frustrating psychological barrier of all, the myth of willpower. Most people believe that saving money is simply a matter of having enough self-control to resist temptation. They think successful savers are just more disciplined, more motivated, or more committed to their goals. This is not only wrong, it's actually harmful because it makes people feel like failures when their willpower inevitably runs out. Here's the truth that the personal finance industry doesn't want you to know. Willpower is not unlimited. It's more like a muscle that gets tired with use. Every time you have to make a decision that requires self-control, you're depleting a finite resource. By the end of a long day filled with decisions, your willpower tank is running on empty, which is exactly when you're most likely to make impulsive financial choices. Research in psychology has shown that people who have to exercise self-control in one area of their lives are more likely to lose control in other areas. If you spend all day resisting the urge to check your phone, eat junk food, or procrastinate at work, you're going to have less mental energy left to resist that online shopping temptation when you get home. This is called decision fatigue, and it's why so many people make their worst financial choices in the evening or on weekends. The personal finance industry loves to pretend that saving money is just about having the right mindset or being disciplined enough to stick to a budget. This narrative is convenient because it puts all the responsibility on you as an individual, but it completely ignores the psychological realities of how your brain actually works. It's like telling someone to just use willpower to hold their breath for an hour. The system isn't designed to work that way. Successful savers aren't people with superhuman willpower. They're people who understand that willpower is unreliable and have built systems that don't require constant self-control. They automate their savings so the money gets moved before they have a chance to spend it. They structure their environment to make good choices easier and bad choices harder. They work with their psychology instead of fighting against it. This is why telling someone to just save more money is about as useful as telling them to just be taller. The advice ignores the underlying psychological and neurological factors that actually drive behavior. Your brain is running software that was designed for a completely different world, and expecting it to naturally excel at modern financial planning is like expecting a fish to climb a tree. But here's where this story takes an interesting turn. Once you understand that your brain is actively working against your savings goals, you can start to design workarounds that actually work with your psychology instead of against it. The people who successfully build wealth aren't the ones with the most willpower. They're the ones who understand how their brains work and create systems that make saving feel automatic and effortless. The key insight is that you don't need to change your brain. You need to change your environment. Instead of relying on willpower to save money, you can set up automatic transfers that move money into savings before you even see it. Instead of fighting against present bias, you can make future rewards feel more immediate and concrete. Instead of battling social comparison, you can surround yourself with people who prioritize financial security over social signaling. Understanding these psychological forces is like finally getting the instruction manual for a machine you've been trying to operate blindfolded for years. Your brain isn't broken and you're not financially hopeless. You're just using Stone Age hardware to navigate a digital world. And frankly, it's amazing any of us managed to save anything at all. Think about it this way. Your ancestors never had to worry about compound interest or retirement planning. The most complex financial decision they faced was whether to eat the berries now or save some for tomorrow. Their brains developed incredibly sophisticated systems for immediate survival, but absolutely zero capacity for managing abstract concepts like investment portfolios or emergency funds that might be needed decades in the future. So when you sit down to create a budget and your brain immediately starts suggesting 17 different ways you could spend that money instead, that's not a character flaw. That's millions of years of evolution doing exactly what it was designed to do. Your brain is trying to protect you from what it perceives as the dangerous act of giving up resources without getting anything tangible in return. The really fascinating part is how your brain processes the concept of future money versus present money. Neuroscientists have discovered that when you think about spending money today, your brain treats it as a real, concrete event. The neural pathways light up in the same areas that would activate if you were actually holding cash in your hand. But when you think about having money in 30 years, your brain processes that the same way it would process a fictional scenario or a daydream. This is why a retirement account balance feels completely abstract, while a shopping cart full of items feels incredibly real and urgent. Your brain literally cannot make future financial security feel as compelling as present financial pleasure. It's like trying to get excited about a vacation you might take in 40 years versus a vacation you're leaving for tomorrow morning. The scientific research on this is both hilarious and depressing. In studies where people are shown brain scans of their future selves, they react to those images the same way they react to pictures of complete strangers. Your brain doesn't recognize your 70-year-old self as actually being you. As far as your neural pathways are concerned, you're trying to save money for some random old person you've never met. So, there you have it. Your brain isn't sabotaging your savings because it hates you or because you're financially doomed. It's just doing what it was designed to do millions of years ago. The good news. Once you understand that you're not fighting against willpower or discipline, but against evolution itself, you can finally stop beating yourself up and start building systems that actually work.